Let's be real. The cost of everything is going up. Finding a stable, good paying job feels harder than ever, and everyone is looking for a reason why. And a simple story has started to take hold that temporary foreign workers are to blame. You probably heard it, the idea that they're a special group taking jobs from Canadians and not paying their taxes. But while that story might feel right to some, it's a dangerous distraction based on bad information. Today, we're going to bust that myth, and my goal isn't to give you my opinion, but to show you the actual evidence. Here's the point we're going to prove. The idea that the temporary foreign workers are privileged is the complete opposite of their real lives. In reality, they are often in a very vulnerable position, paying into the system that doesn't fully support them back. And the real pressure on our job market is not coming from the small, tightly controlled temporary foreign worker program. It's coming from a huge, unchecked explosion in other types of temporary resident status. Let's dig into the facts. First things first, who are we actually talking about? This is the most important thing to understand and is where most of the confusion comes from. In Canada, there are two main types of temporary work permits, and they're completely different. On one side, you have the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, or TFWP. When people complain about temporary foreign workers, this is usually the program they mean, even if they don't know it. This program is super strict. An employer can only hire a foreign worker through this program if they can first prove to the government that no Canadian wanted the job. The proof is called a Labor Market Impact Assessment, or LMIA. As you'll see very soon, getting an LMIA is difficult, expensive, and a total last resort for a company. On the other side, you have a much bigger group of people who get to work here without an LMIA. This includes a program called International Mobility Program, and the biggest group of all, international students and their spouses who can often work freely. These programs don't require proof that a Canadian wasn't available. They exist for other reasons, like fulfilling international agreements or bringing money into our universities. So here's a key takeaway. People are worried about too many workers flooding the market, and that concern is actually coming from the massive growth in the second group, the one that doesn't need an LMIA. And the anger is often aimed at this first, much smaller and highly regulated temporary foreign worker program group. Throughout this video, when I talk about the myths and the facts, I'm specifically talking about the workers in the temporary foreign worker program, because they're the ones getting unfairly blamed. Now, let's get to it. First, let's take down this toxic myth that temporary foreign workers are some kind of favored group. I'm going to show you, using Canadian law and financial facts, that there are full financial contributors who are shut out from many of the benefits that they pay for. Let's start with the biggest lie. The temporary foreign workers don't pay taxes. That is completely false. Under Canadian law, if you work here legally, you have to pay taxes. The Canada Revenue Agency, or CRA, makes sure of that. When they start working, they get a social insurance number that starts with a 9. For payroll purposes, this 9 series SIN works exactly the same as any other. Employers are required by law to deduct the same things from their paychecks as they would for a Canadian citizen. Income tax, CCP contributions, employment insurance, or EI premiums. The government has a whole system to make sure that they pay their fair share based on how long they're here and their ties to Canada. And because they pay in, they're also eligible for things like the GST, HST credit, and the Canada carbon rebate, just like any other low-income resident. And here's the catch. This complicated system can actually be a disadvantage. Imagine trying to figure out our tax system if English or French isn't your first language. Many temporary foreign workers are at a high risk of either overpaying their taxes or not claiming the refunds they're legally owed. That doesn't sound very privileged, does it? The second part of the myth is that temporary foreign workers are stealing Canadian jobs. This completely ignores how the program is designed. It's built to be a last resort. The key to this is the Labor Market Impact Assessment, or LMIA. Before a company can hire a temporary foreign worker, they have to prove to the Canadian government that no Canadian or permanent resident was available to do the job. And the government makes this process intentionally hard and expensive. The employer has to, 1, advertise the job for at least a month on Canada's official job bank and other sites. 2, give a detailed explanation for why every single Canadian they interviewed wasn't hired. 3, Promise to pay the median wage for that job in that area so that they can't use it as an excuse to pay less. And 4, pay a $1,000 application fee for every single worker they want to hire. And that fee is non-refundable. This expensive bureaucratic headache proves that employers can't just easily replace Canadians on a whim. Even the government's own Editor General confirmed that this program is set up so employers hire temporary foreign workers only as a last resort. But here is the single most powerful fact that shatters the privileged worker myth: their relationship with employment insurance, or EI. Hi, if you've got any value from this video so far, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It will really help push my content to more people in your situation. And feel free to leave a comment or questions down below. As we just covered, temporary foreign workers have EI premiums taken off every single paycheck. But what happens if they get laid off? Can they actually collect the EI benefits that they paid for? The answer is almost always no. Here's why. A key rule for getting EI is that you have to be ready, willing, and capable of working each day. But most temporary foreign workers are on a closed work permit, meaning that it's tied to one specific employer. If they lose that job, their legal right to work for anybody else in Canada disappears. They literally cannot be available for work. So they are automatically disqualified from the very insurance they were forced to buy. This isn't some accident or loophole, it's how the system is designed. They are forced to contribute, but are blocked from that benefit. Their payments goes into the EI fund, which helps subsidize the benefits that Canadians can access. That is the definition of inequality, not privilege. So if they aren't privileged, what is their life actually like? The evidence shows that it's a life of serious systemic vulnerability that is built directly into the program. The biggest problem is the closed or employer-specific work permit. It literally ties a worker's legal status in Canada to their job with one single employer. Human rights groups and researchers all point out this as the main reason for exploitation. It creates a massive power imbalance. Workers become completely dependent on their employer for their job, sometimes their housing, and their very right to stay in this country. This creates a culture of fear. Workers are terrified to speak up about stolen wages, dangerous work conditions, or even abuse, because they know their boss can fire them, which can lead to them being sent home. They can't just quit and find a new job. For them to switch employers, the new company has to start that whole expensive LMIA process from scratch. And all that time, the worker is left with no income. This system effectively chains them to their employer. It's not just activists saying this. Canada's own Auditor General has been raising red flags for years, pointing out how bad employers were approved to hire workers for jobs that didn't even exist, and how the government completely failed to protect workers from COVID-19 outbreaks in their overly crowded living quarters. The government's response hasn't been enough. They created something called the Open Work Permit for vulnerable workers, but it only helps after the damage is done. A worker has to have already been abused, have the proof, and then figure out how to apply for this permit, all while they're in the middle of this crisis. The fact that this permit even exists is the government quietly admitting that the program is broken. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound. It helps a few people escape, but it allows the government to avoid fixing the root cause of the abuse, the tied work permit. So if the temporary foreign worker program is the small, strict, and often exploitative system, why do so many people feel like the job market is overflowing? Because we're blaming the wrong program. The real cause is a massive policy decision that has blown up our overall number of temporary residents, mostly through those programs that don't require an LMIA. The numbers are shocking. The share of temporary workers coming through the strict temporary foreign worker program actually dropped from 35% down to 15% between 2011 and 2021. All the growth came from two other places. First, the International Mobility Program, which lets employers hire temporary workers without proving that a Canadian wasn't available. And second, the International Student Program. In 2021, an incredible 60% of all temporary residents who were allowed to work were here as students or their spouses. This one category was responsible for 88% of the entire growth in our temporary worker population over that decade. The floodgate that were opened were for these huge, less regulated programs, not the temporary foreign worker program. But wait, how does having more people lead to more job shortages? It sounds strange, but it's actually an economic twist. A report from the CD Howe Institute explains it. When you suddenly add over 1 million new people to the country, they don't just look for jobs, they also become consumers. They increase the demand for everything: housing, food, transportation, and services. The report concluded that this new demand for stuff has likely grown even faster than the supply of new workers. In other words, the policy of bringing in so many people so quickly has actually made our labor shortages worse and created more competition for everyone. This has created a total mismatch in our economy. We have a flood of people in the general job market, especially for lower wage jobs, coming from those massive students and IMP streams. At the same time, critical jobs in areas like construction and healthcare can't find enough skilled workers. So we basically have two different streams running at the same time. The temporary foreign worker program, a small controlled last resort system trying to fill the specific proven job shortages. And you have student and IMP programs, a massive, less regulated system that isn't tied to what the job market actually needs. The very real negative effects of the second, much larger system are being unfairly blamed on the first. So we've seen that the myths just don't hold up. The idea that temporary foreign workers don't pay taxes is factually incorrect. And the claim that they steal jobs ignores the reality that they were specifically recruited to fill documented labor shortages that Canadian employers can't find local workers for. Now, it's important to see how this fits into the bigger picture. We've all heard about the recent government caps on international students and the major changes to postgraduate work permit eligibility. While these policies might offer some long-term relief for housing and social services, they don't really solve the immediate labor needs that the temporary foreign worker program was designed to address. And this is where we see the real human cost of a broken system. When housing is unaffordable and the wages aren't keeping up, it's easy to look for someone to blame. Temporary foreign workers, international students, or other permit holders become convenient scapegoats for complex problems they didn't create. They, along with many Canadians, are caught in the middle, navigating a system that often fails to support either the newcomers or the communities they join. They are also victims here, facing blame for systemic failures while simply trying to build a better life and contribute to our economy. Ultimately, the challenges in our immigration system are complex because blaming the people who are here to work, study, and fill essential jobs isn't only false, it distracts from the real conversation we need to have about corporate responsibility, fair wages, and build a country that truly works for everyone. If you've made it this far to the video, thank you so much for your support. And if you get any value from this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe buttons because it will really help push my content to more people in your situation. And if you feel like this video would be helpful for somebody else, by all means, share it. And if you have any comments or experience you would like to share, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video.